Welcome to the Dystopian Renaissance. We cover spirituality, healing, consciousness, and truth. In this chaotic world we live in, it's important to get out of the matrix, and we'll do just that with biohacking, nutrition, spiritual awakenings, alternative healing, and freedom. This is the Dystopian Renaissance, and this is your host, Johnny Sage.
I'm sitting today with Charlie, who is a podcaster. Charlie, I checked out your podcast, and you've been on a journey of consciousness and healing yourself, right?
Yes, I have.
Either how did that get started, or did you have some type of awakening, or when did you know you needed to heal?
Good question, right? Awakening, not necessarily. I think just naturally unfolded when I found yoga a couple years ago. Started stretching, and then that kind of evolved into meditating, right? And then breathing and all these sorts of things. And honestly, I feel like everybody has some type of realization or awakening or consciousness. And these words nowadays have like a little bit of sprinkles on them, but I think we're all in general looking for some type of peace in our lives, and that's what leads us onto this journey. For me, it wasn't necessarily the starting point for it. For me, it was anger, actually, and not internal anger or like I was mad. It was more anger realizing what the world was and the unfairness, and then looking back at what the history books were teaching us, and then the reality of life, and also growing out of the bubble of being in high school and then in college, and kind of like, that's why a lot of the movement right now with the woke movement is happening with college age people, because that's really when you start opening your mind out of your bubble. You know, you're on your own pretty much through 12 with your friends, and you build a little world, and then you come into the world and you're like, wait, this is the world? People are going hungry, people are dying, the government's corrupt. What is money? Wall Street? You know, so to answer your question, it started there, and then kind of, instead of being angry, kind of looking internally and saying, well, what can I do to change myself and be a better person, really?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thanks for sharing that. Synchronistically enough, that's how mine started too, was more of the truth aspect of like what was really going on, you know, what we were taught, how society functioned, and then you kind of start noticing things that there were some cracks beneath that veneer, and yeah, that didn't really make sense. So then you look deeper, and it could go to like lead to dark places, like some of those rabbit holes for sure. So that was like, it's been interesting because a lot of people on this path have had different introductions. Some have like been on the spiritual path first, or they had some hit of consciousness, or they just started healing first. So they haven't, but mine was certainly more based in the physical world, like the truth aspect and all. Yeah, I think that was like the money part was one of the first things I learned about too. Like that was back in, I think by stand-up comedians first. Like they were taught like Bill Hicks and Carlin, and then after the years later, like some other ones. But and then I watched this documentary, and documentaries were like my initial like awakening, both on like health and then also how the monetary system worked. And you're like,
any particular documentary?
It was in 2007. I think it was called America, Freedom to Fascism. Aaron Russo directed it, who like died mysteriously, of course, like most of the people that do that expose stuff. But it basically said the Federal Reserve was private. And I was like, what? That makes no sense. You know, before that, you just think money, you just think money comes from, you know, some good entity, you know, either the government or something like that. It'd be, before that part, because you're in school, you're taught like the government's good for all things, you know. So that's where, and he also brought up a lot of good points. But once I knew the Federal Reserve was private, I was like, oh, things started to kind of like. And once you know one thing, you start questioning other things too. You know, it tends to lead to other. It follows a path, you know. It's like because you can't just know one thing and just be like, oh, well, that's it. You just notice things. And I don't know, like they have a metaphor like putting on the glasses or something from like, I don't know if you see that movie, They Live. from the 80s. It was like once you put on the glasses, you could see how things really were. Like you would look at billboards and it would have this like fun message, but you put on the glasses, it was like kind of programming, you know?
Yeah, subconscious programming.
So, which it is, you know, like what's on TV or even like internet advertising now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I stopped watching TV because of that. Because I was like, oh, I don't want to fill in my brain with all these messages, and music as well. Music was a big thing for me. I let go of certain music. And so I started maybe listening to more, I don't know, rock, Beatles, and just different music than street music, like urban music, hip hop music, which nowadays I will listen to, and I can have fun with it. As in before, it was more of trying to mimic something that wasn't naturally me.
Yeah, 'cause I liked hip hop too a lot, like especially like the 80s and even 90s when it was getting darker for sure, lower vibrational, like they would say now. But the music was still good. Like the lyrics, I don't really recognize like hip hop anymore now, like the mumblecore stuff. And you could argue like even the 90s, it was still programming for sure. I've even heard it argued like the CIA kind of had that I started gangster rap. So then I like looked into it and followed just the line of like the executives. I'm like, oh, that actually kind of makes sense. But either way, like when hip hop started, I really think it was anti-establishment, and it did give a voice to people that didn't really have one, you know?
Absolutely.
And it was like the music was based from stuff that they were really going through. I don't want to say like, I was going to say a positive message, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a positive message, but it was a real message, you know, one that was like brought to light what they were really going through. If it kept going like that, I think it would have been more destructive to the current system, you know, rather than creating more division and keeping people in that lower vibrational state and oppressed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you can still find those hidden gems here and there. You know, there's still people writing conscious music, even if they are mainstream. Well, it's just up to you what you decide to listen to and fill your brain with.
That's what I noticed is like there are the anti-establishment hip hop artists, but it's hard to find their songs. Like they're either on like BitChute or these. They're not very rare. Some are on YouTube, but they can be censored too. Right. So it's harder to find. They're definitely not getting promoted in the mainstream too much. And like one's even always like on like, you know, he's kind of attacked. They're like, he's always on the worst rappers alive list or something. But the message, if you read the comments of like the real people, you could tell like he is getting his message out there, and he is bringing to light a lot of stuff. He is reaching people, but you kind of have to hear it by word of mouth, which I guess how it was back then in the day.
Yeah.
And I heard, I think it was Russell Brand who talked about it. He said like the system's very good at co-opting movements too. Like hip hop and punk started out very anti-establishment, but then like once like the establishment got a hold of it, then it just became about money and all this other stuff like materialism.
Yeah, right. Money, cars, women.
Promiscuity. Just
repeat it. Yeah.
Yeah, just going out party, like alcohol, drugs, like all that. So, and that got really popular. And you're right, it is kind of influential, especially if you're a kid, to want to emulate like living in that kind of state. You know, you think that's what's fun and cool. So not that you like aren't your own person, but like when you're in that influential state, it's like you see that and you don't really know what else is out there at that point too. Especially because like when I was younger, it was like still pre-internet, or it was like really young. So we didn't have that reach to see what really connect with other people. So like when you're growing up, that's really your circle, you know, and you don't know what else is out there.
Absolutely. Something I took out of hip hop, I think it was before, was poetry. So I love writing poetry now. And I think that's kind of where hip hop came from, right? Like just rhyming and writing and your thoughts, and then you put a beat to it. So it just, I don't know, it just depends, like art form. And I feel that hip hop, poetry right now it doesn't have the platform it deserves. However, if you are into poetry, it's like a small little niche group. It's still alive. You can still find some really good stuff out there.
I have seen some conscious events like where they try to give a platform to poets. Have you come across those?
Yeah, I've actually participated in some and actually shared some poetry. Yeah.
Now, how are they received by the people that attend them? Are they open to that? And
people love it. If you mix poetry and music together and just like a nice environment, it's a great night.
Yeah, that's what I've seen. It's usually like a blend of like poetry, music, maybe a food vendor or something like that.
Yeah, sometimes comedy too.
Yeah. There's conscious comedians out there as well. For the hip hop, like, have you ever like wrote any music or anything like that, or you prefer just straight poetry form?
Honestly, I prefer just straight poetry. Yeah.
And how did you get introduced by that? Did you come across some good poetry, or was it just the way you could express yourself?
Actually, in 10th grade, they were teaching me about Shakespeare, and I would completely shut down like the class, and I would just be writing and not paying attention to the class at all. And I don't know, for some reason, my best writing has always been in an environment that is like kind of chaotic, or there's a lecture happening. So yeah. In school, English class. Yep.
Hey, I don't often talk about this, but I wanted to be a writer at one point. Like I was writing, like entering amateur contests and festivals. Like this was for a few years. And it was, but the way, well, I'll say this first. But my best writing usually came in my darkest moments too. Like when I was happy, but it would really be poignant, this stuff. But when I was like really depressed or going through something, that was like what I would take it out on. And I'd really be happy with the result at the end, no matter how it was received by anyone else. And that's why I kind of fell out of it. Like, it was once I started doing healing on myself, like I didn't really have to like express myself in that way. And I'm not saying it's like that for everyone, but for me, I think I was writing for the wrong reasons, I was doing it in lieu of healing. So for that,
interesting.
Yeah, it's like, and now I'm almost reluctant to go back to writing, even though like I have to, like as a business owner. So it's like now, but I guess that's like the next phase is still, I know I can incorporate that and still do it from a conscious place. And just because like I did that at a dark time doesn't mean it has to go hand in hand.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely. How
did we find each other on Instagram?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think it was just Christina Galvez.
Okay.
I think that because somehow you knew her, and like I went to her like for one of the healings as well too.
And she teaches, or
she teaches, yeah.
What does she teach?
She's mainly Reiki, although she's expanded now. She's been on the podcast.
Okay.
She does. It's not coaching. It's a really intricate program, but she developed like her own method. So
yeah.
It's that she's not even on social media as much anymore. So she's got more like through her website and her program. So I could see it because social media can, it's definitely irritating to a degree. It's not always the most conscious content, even if that's what you like look at. They're always trying to promote like advertisements and
of course
all this like stupid stuff. So
yeah, when I saw your page, I was like excited to see somebody else interviewing other people in the spiritual community. And so that's how I started my podcast, trying to talk to people that are doing yoga or sound baths or some type of healing practice, just because that's my background.
Yeah.
I used to teach Kundalini Yoga.
Which I want to ask you about at some point.
Yeah. So let's just get into it. Yeah. I practiced Kundalini Yoga and taught it for about 5 years. I practiced at Yoga West under Guru Singh. And so like I really like Guru Singh because he's all like up here, just channeling and always. And there's another teacher there, Guru Prem, and he was always about like your posture. Like if he saw this, he would be having a fit right now. But the way he explained each posture and how to hold it, how to breathe through it was, I loved it. And so, yeah, I taught it about 5 years at Venice, at West Adams. I taught it at Long Beach for a while. And here in LA, pretty much, up until this year where I just kind of put that hat on the shelf and decided not to teach anymore.
And did you train at Yoga West, or that's where you mainly went to class?
Oh, no, I trained there.
Okay, so you went through the teacher trade program there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like 5 minutes from my mother's house and where I grew up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And they closed at the end of 2020, right?
I heard, yeah, they closed, yeah.
Was that kind of like, did that hit you a little bit or?
No, it didn't hit me. I mean, it is what it is. I like that area though. It's like a little mecca. Like there is a Sikh community, there's a Jewish community, there's a Catholic and Christian community, all like in the same 4-block radius. And so like every weekend you just see all these different religious people and cultures all kind of mingling in that area. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. And that I dealt with the Sikh community like a few weeks ago because they had an event like across the street from where Yoga West was. It used to be where they did recitations pretty much 24/7. I forget the name of it, but I went there and it was really nice. Like the energy felt different when you walked in.
Yeah, it's interesting. They had somebody chanting 24/7. Like people just take shifts chanting mantras and very interesting. Yeah.
That was a little sad to hear when they said they stopped that during like the lockdowns and stuff, because that was going on for decades, I think. And to stop that, I was like, oh, wow, like that type of tradition. And Guru Prem was the one who was talking about how you could feel the really high vibrational state just from, even if you couldn't hear the person chanting directly, it just gave the place this really high energy. It just felt really great. And it was elevating when you walked in or were doing it. I guess in the old days, they would even teach classes there.
Yeah. And yourself, you practiced?
I did the Kundalini Yoga teacher training.
Yeah.
And but Kundalini Yoga has definitely changed over the past couple of years too. Because Guru Singh, as I'm sure you know, moved online like when Yoga West closed.
Yeah.
That Guru Prem's doing his own thing. And like, because they were the teacher trainer, they were great. But and I found Kundalini Yoga hasn't been as powerful online either. So Yoga West just had that amazing energy when that many people would be together.
There's definitely something about being in a group setting, correct? Yeah.
Which I think they also did with like the White Tantra events. I only got to do one of those, but
that's torture.
Yeah.
If you ask me, that's torture.
I was surprised I got through it. Like it was rewarding at the end of it, but I was surprised. Like I didn't need to lower my arm. But for the people that don't know, like you're basically like in these postures.
You're holding your posture like maybe like this for how long?
Sometimes up to 40 minutes. Like
40 minutes.
Some are shorter.
Staring at somebody right in front of you.
Yeah, because what is it, like around 8 hours long or maybe 10
It's a whole day.
It's all day, yeah. And it's like you take some breaks here or there. There is a lunch, but I think some are like 10 to 20 minutes, but others are like 40 minutes. And if you're holding them up there or like with your partner too, you really have to navigate it. And somehow I got through it. I know it wasn't like one of the hard, because I guess they vary in difficulty. That wasn't one of the hardest ones, but I don't think it was one of the easiest ones either from what I heard from other people that attended to like, because some people go twice a year to these events. So it was an accomplishment, but that was pretty rough for sure.
Pretty rough is a nice way to say it.
But it was nice. And I did have something to talk about afterwards with the person I was partnered up with. So there was something to it. I could see that. But I don't.
It's a great experience.
Yeah.
It's a great experience. I mean, you do a lot of, obviously you're there, so you're conscious, but you're doing a lot of subconscious work at the same time because you're repeating and repeating. And at the same time, you are battling that monkey brain that's telling you, okay, I'm going to give up. I'm going to stop. I'm going to quit. And not just that, your muscles and your nervous system are like shot. There's no way you can prepare for anything like that. The only way to do it is just go and show up.
No, you're right. And that was the biggest surprise for me is I didn't think I'd be able to do it. Like any minute, I felt I was going to have to give up. But I kept with it and I did it. And that was, I don't know how, but I got through it. So I didn't have to like let go or lower my arms or hands, no matter what the position was at any moment. So, and that what did bring some level of satisfaction at the end. Like, oh, wow, even when my brain's telling me I have to give up or I can't do this, I can do it.
Yeah.
And there's actually a different Kundalini Yoga teacher who told me, like, it was explaining one of those exercises. I think it was like during the Kriya for self-love or one of those things. And she was saying, if you just stick with it, it's easier than if you like switch positions or lower your arms or wherever it's hurting and try to get back into it. And if you just stay with it, it sets a stronger foundation to infinity, as she called it.
It kind of reminds me of David Goggins and his message where it's your body wants to stop. Your mind wants to stop. But you get to a certain point that you stop listening to that and you just kind of keep going. And that it's hard to understand it if you've never been through that.
Yeah. You're right. It's something like I could sit here and describe, and it just sounds so easy. Like, oh, it hurt, and I sat with it and it was done.
Mm-hmm.
But like when you actually are there and you sit with that physical pain and have that, not knowing how much longer is left to go, it's really like a scary feeling, and you have to conquer that fear, conquer that pain. But like I said, and it seems like you've noticed too, it really was a sense of accomplishment afterwards. So, and I think I didn't really reflect on that lesson as much as I could have now, just thinking about it now, you know. It was a more powerful moment than I thought it was originally.
Right.
Now I can share that. Now I'm nervous to ever go back to one of those and watch. I'm not able to do it.
So you did the training.
I did the training, and I did the first, the White Tantra event I did was towards the beginning of the training. I think it was a month or two into it. And then, then I did.
And what got you into, did you teach after?
I did teach, yeah.
So what got you into wanting to train and teach and all that?
I realized what I heard people talking, some of the people that were teaching some of the other healing modalities, I was trying out, they would always talk about Kundalini Yoga. Mm-hmm. So it was and people were mentioning Yoga West, a friend went there and she's like, oh, I really like circulating the energy. And I heard about some other conscious practices, like Taoist practices, how they would circulate the energy. So it kept coming up, and I'm like, that does seem to be a good skill to have. And yeah, so I was curious. So then I went to a couple classes. Right. And Guru Singh was he really hooks you in, because I liked it because he was also awake. He talked, it wasn't just about yogic philosophy he talked about. It was also about changing the system, and
yeah, absolutely.
And in a way that it was relatable. It really did cause conflict or anything like that. So
he was pretty aware of the current events. He wasn't just speaking about the spiritual stuff. He had a pretty good sense of what's happening in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because that's where I kind of felt I was, because I definitely was becoming spiritual, but I also wanted to tell truth. Some of the spirituality stuff could get a little too...
Right. So what does that mean to you, getting more spiritual? What do you mean by that?
Because I didn't believe in any of this stuff at all. I was completely physical world based. I didn't want to hear of anyone named Guru or,
right.
It's or crystals or, mm-hmm. I didn't, it was that was stupid, that's but the traditional methods of healing weren't working for me either. So, and my healing journey started once I hit a rock bottom, and I would.
Can I ask you about that rock bottom? What do you mean? Why did you feel you needed to heal? What happened?
There's a very long answer to that, because it was cumulative for sure. It was building, but the shorter answer is just I was stuck with depression, anxiety, mm-hmm. Even PTSD. And it just wasn't I tried traditional therapy, which wasn't working. If anything, sometimes it made it worse in some cases. Mm-hmm. Not saying people should avoid therapy for sure. There is good therapy out there. But for me, it just wasn't working. So after that, and even with physical ailments too, having some inflammation or something too, I was how do I get rid of this? But then I started with acupuncture and those float pods, and so it started more physical and mental based. And I had to heal from that. And then it started, I saw an Ayurvedic healer, and that brought me to combo. And then all of a sudden this stuff started becoming manageable, and it started changing me too. I was becoming a better person, and quickly. So at the point where I probably did a complete 180 within my first year of this alternative healing journey. And then within probably a few months, I tried ayahuasca, and that's, I think, when it started to become more spiritual. It really opened my mind to new things. I still wanted to be skeptical, and to this day, I think it is good to have healthy skepticism, because I always say there is BS out there and scams and, stuff that probably isn't working or will work for a majority of people. So be, cautious. Don't just take people's word for it. But I was more open-minded, meaning in the way that I would be open to trying something new, And it's I didn't want to say it would work, and I didn't want to just even though I would have considered it normally, I didn't want to just write it off before it even started, because I knew that could itself like sabotage it, So you could sabotage anything if you wanted to. So that just led to more stuff. And then naturally I got into this like circle, and then you start talking about crystals and shamanic drumming and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So wow.
I feel you on the whole crystal conversation. I was very like resistant on it as well. But there was one crystal that I found, and every time I would touch it, I would feel its vibration, and I would feel like I would change my vibration. It's the only crystal that I've ever experienced that with, and I lost it at the park.
Oh, man.
But maybe somebody else found it that needed it.
Yeah. I saw this meme that said like, oh, you're noticing crystals are mysteriously disappearing, like that is a reason for it or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's a phenomenon that supposedly could happen with crystals. They just like disappear.
I want to go back to the place I got that crystal at. It's near San Diego, and it's called the Indian store. You've been?
I haven't been to it, but I've heard of it.
You've heard of it, yeah. I want to go back.
Yeah, that is, from what I've heard, like one of my teachers like got her crystals from there, and they were definitely like higher energy, you could say for sure. Like
honestly, it sounds crazy. Sounds not real. That's how I feel about it like that now.
Yeah.
I've only had that experience at one time with that crystal.
Yeah, because I'm sure you could get crappy crystals too, ones
I don't know. Fake, I don't know. But that one moment, I felt real.
That's how it changed. One teacher explained it to me like crystals are in our computer screens, our phone screens, our countertops. They actually are proven to hold memory. So once like I looked into that, I'm like, yeah, they do. There is some science behind it. So it's not just complete, oh, just feel this or whatever. Like they are used for actual purposes in our day-to-day life.
I feel like we can give it power too. Like and not just crystal, anything. The food you're going to consume, the water you're going to drink. If you have a conscious thought of like, okay, I'm going to give this power with like consciousness, and it's just a positive thought, positive affirmation, right? You've seen when they freeze water and you're having certain thoughts, like if it's a negative thought, it's like all like distorted. But if you're having like a positive, loving thought, then it looks more like a snowflake. Like you can't see it, but we kind of give these tools, we can give these tools a power. And I don't know if power is the right word to use, but that's how I feel how crystals are. Like if we reject it, or food, if we reject it, no, it's not going to help me. It's not going to help you. Kind of like placebo effect, if you believe it, it might affect you. Like I think that's what it is with these crystals and anything and these healing, like Reiki. I've never experienced Reiki myself, but some people swear by it. Who am I to say? Like, if that's what works for you, that's what works for you. The point is, like, if you're on a journey to find some type of healing or stop the roller coaster that sometimes happens in everybody, right? That's what makes us human. We all have that thoughts happening, right? Depression, anxiety, PTSD. And so we're seeking a way, like, how do we calm this? And actually, how do we understand it? And how do we move forward in our lives? So if any of these tools work for you or help you get to the next level of happiness or tranquility, why not? Why not? And you mentioned something earlier, like where you were trying different things. And that's what I always tell people, like, just go out, try whatever, anything, everything. And if it doesn't work for you, just keep moving it. And if it's something that resonates, there it is. You found it. It can be as simple as writing. It could be hiking, or it can be going to a yoga class or going to a float tank. Like the point is that you're human and you're going to feel these emotions. You're going to feel these things. You're going to experience, and there's no way we're going to stop it. Like, only because I feel fine now doesn't mean tomorrow I'm going to feel great, or some life-changing experience is going to happen and I'm going to be prepared for it. The point of this spiritual or healing journey, I believe, is so that we acquire the tools to prepare us for whatever comes in life. Nothing can prepare us for, let's say, a loss of a family member, or maybe monetary issues, or when we get to our 20s or 30s, I feel that childhood stuff starts up, like, oh, wait, this is from my childhood, or my family messed me up. Like, nothing can prepare us for these things, but if we acquire the right tools, like breath work, right? I think the best tool and the easiest tool anybody can have in their back pocket is breath work. Sometimes you just need to pause and take a breath, really. And if you're nervous about something, maybe take a couple breaths, right? And it'll calm you back down. So, find the tools that work for you and try to live your best life. And accept that sometimes that's not going to be the case. So then you bring those tools out. Shower in the morning, a nice little cold shower. It might change. It's going to like regulate your nervous system and then get the blood flowing a certain way, right? So that's what it is. Just find whatever works for you. Some people can write at night. Some people can read all day. Just find it. Find those tools and be human at the same time and just accept what comes.
Yeah. That's why I notice a lot of people, like even some of the classes I teach, the students, they're really talented and they learn one thing and they get really excited. And that's where their healing journey ends. And maybe that's okay for some people, but I found it was better getting a comprehensive approach on it. There were different modalities that would address different things. It wasn't like one be-all, end-all, like I learned Reiki and now that was it. That just dealt with every single thing that could happen in my life and that happened to me. It was like I found like a combination of like Reiki could deal with some stuff, breath work for other things, yoga for things other than that, like just, or sound healing. Like it was depending how I felt, what I was dealing with. It was, and I'm not saying people have to learn all those or maybe even different things than those, but it was nice to explore. And that's why, especially like some of my newer students, it's not on me to tell them how to do their journey because that's on them. But
that's the tricky part about being a teacher, where you want to be like, hey, go this way, but that's not the job. That's not part of the teacher.
No, like because I see them making quote unquote mistakes, but you're right. It's not me to live their journey or tell them what to do. So it's hard. Like I have to sometimes watch them like hit a wall and be stuck there. It's like one of my mentors called like he would just say, let him fall into the darkness,
Well, don't we all learn all of our lessons through those journeys of falling and getting back up?
Yeah.
Those are necessary in life.
Yeah, that's like what I needed to really start change. Although I learned like my lesson now, I don't really need that. Now I can kind of change with less of a negative motivating factor. So
that's kind of why I stopped teaching, because I got to a point where I told myself, wait, I have enough. When you teach yoga too, like you're also a student because you're learning through just kind of watching and also observing yourself. But I stopped teaching because one, I felt like that was my next calling. Just stop teaching and actually go back into like student mode. What does that mean? I'm not too sure yet because I just stopped teaching. I was going to ask you to get onto a different topic. Did you have a go-to or favorite Kriya that you liked? Because I have one that I want to share with you.
The one I used the most, and I still use parts of it, was, believe it or not, the first one I really learned was the strengthening the aura Kriya. Okay. Because it was relatively simple, but the aura was so important, and it really would change. It was with my numerology, it was one of the things I had to work on. I think it was aura and pranic body were the two. So oddly enough, I fell into that even before I got the numerology, saying I should work on an aura Kriya or meditation. So that's just one of the things in my life path that I have to deal with. I did notice a change too. And if it's going to keep your aura strong anyways, like that is our shield or force field. As funny as it sounds, it is our, I guess protection is the better term too. It can keep stuff away, and you do feel better when your aura is strong. And so a lot of people say that's where things originate, is in your aura before they actually hit your physical body, like when things go wrong. So that, even though it's not a popular Kriya or one that people will be amazed by, be like afterwards, like, wow, that was amazing. I thought it was simple, yet got a good workout because you're doing triangle push-ups at one point too. So for a good amount of time. And yeah, it really helped me. So that was like the one I would like fall back on, if nothing else. Even come back to today from time to time. So I would say it's like my favorite, but the one I've used the most for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I during the training, I stepped out to go use the restroom, as I do, because I don't just drink water, I chug water. And so I stepped out to use the restroom. And when I came back, the class had continued. There was a little pause, and there's like 50, 60 people, and I got back late. And they had already started practicing, right? And they were, we were doing this, right? We were doing this, and the teacher was actually the master teacher. And so they're doing this, and he's like, get mad. Like, why did my parents do this? And why does this happen to me in my life? And so I didn't know what was happening. I just sat down. Okay, here I go. Right. And so bring your aura to be red, make it red. And so at the end of the, and then we start doing some punches, right? We're doing punches. And what he was describing is saying like, and this was controversial for some, but I really liked it. What we were punching God. We were questioning God, like, God, why'd you do this to me? Universe, why did you allow this to happen to me, right? So that triggers something. When God is brought up, God is implanted, the thought of God is implanted into us at a very young age, right? Whether it's by our family, we watch something, we hear something, right? God, this thing that we don't really know, and what's tied with God, religion, right? So that's deeply ingrained into our subconscious. And so a lot of people struggle when you say, oh, question God. Like, oh no, like don't question God, fear God, right? And so what he was explaining is like, you think God's going to be mad at a little speck of sand, a little ant? Like, it's like an ant trying to get mad at an elephant. Like, God's not going to get mad, actually. And so the whole point of that was to trigger something and actually get you mad. Get some part of your subconscious that you have anger and you have sadness, whatever it is, get in there, and then you're right, kind of like remove it and then plant a seed of love. Because the way we ended the class was laying down and then visualizing a lotus flower in our heart. And so, right, visualizing opening and opening and opening. And also then what's the color of your lotus flower? What's the color of your lotus flower, right? It's like a big meditation. And at the end of the class, we come back up. I was crying, by the way. And I was like getting mad. I was remembering all this childhood stuff. And so at the end of the class, they're like, oh yeah, this was actually a rebirth Kriya. And so it was a rebirth. Like, it's pretty much, leaving something to die and then letting a flower grow, just rebirthing. Anyway, that was my favorite. And so I'd love to teach that one. And, the thing about teaching that or anything where you want to bring up anger is that I would always tell anybody that participated, just like, if you need to talk or reach out to me again, like please do, because you're triggering people, and you don't know how people can handle triggers. Only because I can handle my triggers the way I handle them doesn't mean that if I bring something up through a meditation and yoga that they're going to be okay the next day only because I planted a flower. Although I must say that the reason I would teach is because to me it was the most powerful class I ever experienced. And so anything that I learned is what I would try to teach. And so through teaching that, I also learned that, wait, not everybody reacts the same way to this kind of stuff. And and I would kind of like mold it in my own way. And so maybe to like calm it down and not be so in your face, because I would always try to tell people ahead of time, like, this is a rebirth class, so we will be bringing up stuff. And so just be prepared for that. But yeah, it was my favorite class to teach. And I think for me, it it changed my perspective of how to teach. And because, okay, so when I first started doing yoga, it was more body, right? Stretching, poses, and then it was breathing, right? And then meditation. And then I got to a place where I got obsessed with subconscious. And so I just really appreciate doing subconscious work at that point. And so it changed my perspective of how to teach and honestly, just, let's get to where we need to get and let's let go of what we need to let go.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think pretty much I was introduced to Hatha yoga first, like the asana, the poses, and
right.
But there's so many other different forms of yoga too that we're not really exposed to in Western culture. But there's really great stuff there. So which was I found nice to explore. It sounds like it was nice that you got to check all this stuff out too. And I know you're done teaching. Is there a chance you might go back to it, or you're done forever?
Honestly, I feel like I'm always going to be a student and a teacher at the same time. Just me being me. I'll be a teacher just being myself, and I'm going to be a student being myself. Teaching an actual yoga class, I don't think I'm going to go back that route. Maybe when I have a big gray beard and I'm wrinkly. Maybe.
And no, fair enough. That makes sense. And do you know what's next for your spiritual healing path? Has anything called to you, or are you just play it by ear, just doing the writing?
Just keep it personal now.
Keep it personal.
Yeah, just keep it to myself and just practice, bring all those tools that I was talking about and just do it for myself at this point and walk life a certain way, and yeah, really, like I don't see myself teaching or even going on another spiritual path or anything like that. And that's what I was asking earlier. Like, what is being spiritual? What does the spiritual path mean to you? And in essence, it's very basic and it's not, which is just having a connection with whatever you believe to be a higher energy or a higher being or a God, or if it has a name or if there's a book, like whatever it might be. Like to me, it's just that connection. And sometimes it's just a moment in a day, or sometimes where's that connection? We're on Earth, so I don't know. I don't see myself going on another spiritual, but hey, maybe that's my ego talking. Who knows? I'm not too sure.
You're right. Spiritual is a very broad term. I've come to realize the community is vast. There's all sorts of stuff something for everyone, in a way it's good. But it's like not everything's going to be for everything either,
right.
Or not everything's going to be for everyone, I should say, which is fine. It's like, because it could be more serious, it could be very fun, and the personal part makes sense. I think if someone takes the spiritual path, I don't want to say, seriously is the right term, but because it doesn't have to necessarily be serious, but if you're really taking it to heart, there's going to be a time where you're going to be by yourself anyways, like really doing self-reflection and to do the inner work. There's a lot of stuff only you can do. So,
I think I'm ready to be on Earth. I was really up here for a while doing like spiritual, whatever that means, and like subconscious work. And now I'm just kind of like landing and grounding myself and saying like, all right, this is Earth. Let's be human again and let's live life as best as we can.
That makes sense, because the spiritual path you can kind of be hard on yourself a lot of times.
Actually, maybe 2 years ago, I told myself, all right, I mentally told myself, no more healing work, no more, because there has to be a balance. Like we have to know how to play and how just to flow and live here on Earth. And I caught myself, I need to heal this. There's something wrong with me here. I was telling Zoe that not too long ago, one of my biggest fears was not being able to recognize myself and my flaws. And you know how you see somebody 3 to 5 years later and you're like, ooh, they're still that way? That was my biggest fear, of like being seen a couple years later and like, he hasn't figured that part of himself out. And so I had to let all that stuff go and say, you know what? I'm human. Nobody's perfect. We're going to get things wrong. And this journey of whatever you want to call healing or spiritual or walking towards the light, whatever it is, like it's a lifelong journey. And sometimes it's okay to just chill and just, have a good time, do the things you want to do here on earth, and maybe not focus too much on healing. Like whatever I think what I'm trying to say is like, whatever connection you have to a higher being or source or God, the universe, you can have that without healing or needing to heal. If anything, I mean, I don't know. I used to be big on history. And if anything, I mean, this God is going to accept you no matter what, however you are.
And your podcast, what's that called? Short synopsis, what's it about, and where can people find it?
So it's called The Mind of Charlie Herrera. Charlie Herrera anywhere, like Instagram or YouTube. And really what we spoke about now, that's pretty much what I'm talking to people about. Some people are teachers, some people are facilitators, some people are musicians, but I'm trying to get a bigger, like wider guest of like, not just that, like I want to talk to humans and their experiences and why they do what they do and what they're hoping to do. Leaders in communities, whatever the community is. Yeah.
And if so, liked what you had to say, resonate with them, and they have a question or want to reach out, are they able to?
Yeah, Charlie Herrera on Instagram and on YouTube. And then Gammy's Basement TV is coming soon. We do have another podcast we're going to be doing together. Keep an eye out for that.
All right. Yeah, what's just a quick synopsis on that too? What will that be about?
Life, fun, enjoying, right? Yeah. Yeah. Lighthearted content, being human. Yeah.
Sounds nice.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that for sure. I think we all use a little of that.
Yeah.
But thank you for coming on today and sharing your story. And yeah, I appreciate the work you're doing. And yeah, the clips you've put out are really great. So I recommend that people check them out.
Check me out. Check us out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
I'm glad you got to hear Charlie's story today and his insights. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. We got another great show coming out. I have a Patreon. Any amount you can donate is appreciated. Be seeing you.
You've been listening to the Dystopian Renaissance. Spirituality, healing, consciousness, truth. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review the show. And tell a friend or two. That would help also. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at the Dystopian Renaissance. And please find the website at www.thedystopianrenaissance.com.